Hello friends, welcome to week 4 of Samachar Manthan series. So let's start with IR. The first topic we'll take is India-West Asia relations. Now the basic idea while we'll covering one topic in detail in IR is that by the end of the year, you won't require any other course to, or you won't require any other material for IR. Basic idea is we'll dedicate or we'll do a full analysis of one topic every week, so that by the end of the year your IR is complete, because IR is mostly current affairs based. IR is mostly dynamic. The static part is limited in IR, right? So I don't want you people to enroll into a different course for IR. I want all the IR should be completed in my Samachar Manthan course itself. ठीक है ना? So India-West Asia relationship. So there was an op-ed on that. So usually what I do is that if I see a good op-ed, then I thought that I think that let's make a whole comprehensive article on that. So India-West Asia relationship. If we start first by understanding what is West Asia, what is the geography of West Asia, what is the geopolitics of West Asia, because in order to understand the region, you need to first understand its history. You need to first understand its geography, right? So West Asia, there are three types of terms which are used, and many aspirants get confused on it. First term is the Arab world. The Arab world consists of all the countries who speak Arabic. So it includes countries of Asia, countries of Northern Africa, Egypt, Lebanon, Tunisia, Morocco, Sudan, all these are Arabic speaking countries. So Arab, when we talk of Arab word, it actually signifies a culture, which is the countries which speak Arabic language, and which majority of them, or almost all of them except Lebanon, Lebanon is 50% Christian, all of them are mostly Muslim. Second is Middle East. Middle East is a term used as a geographical term, and it includes countries from three continents. Includes countries of West Asia, includes countries of North Africa, and some part of Europe, which is the Turkey. Now third term is West Asia. West Asia is completely a geographical term. It does not mean any culture. It means all the countries which are beyond Afghanistan. So it starts from Iran and it continues till, let's say, the whole of Arabian Peninsula. It includes Egypt, sorry, not Egypt, it includes Israel. It also includes the Asian part of Turkey. Right. So in this West Asia, there are 4 or 5 various ethnic groups which live. One is the Arab people. Second is the Kurdish people. The Kurdish people are they are in various countries, but they don't have their own homeland, and that is why the Kurds in Turkey, the Kurds in Iraq, they are demanding a separate homeland for the Kurdish people. The third is the Coptic Christians, which is the Arabic speaking Christians. Fourth is Assyrians. Fifth is Druze. Druze is it's kind of a religion which is very similar to Shia Islam, but it's not a part of Islam. It's a different religion. Sixth is Judaism. So these are the main ethnic groups of this region. Majority of them are Arabs. Okay? And seventh is Persians. Those people who speak Persian language. Remember, Iran is not part of the Arab world, because Iranians speaks Persian language. They don't speak Arabic. Moving on, we need to understand the geopolitics of West Asia. We need to understand it through 5 factors. There are 5 factors which are responsible for all the conflict in the Middle East. There are 5 factors which are responsible for the geopolitics of the Middle East. Let us understand these 5 factors. So first factor is the colonial roots. So major part of this region, it was under the Ottoman rule during till the first few decades of the 20th century. During the World War I, England and France promised many of these countries, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, to support the British and the French, because if Ottomans will be defeated, they will get independence. But Ottomans were defeated, but they did not got independence. Rather, they were divided as mandates among the British and the France. So many of the basic problem lies with this fact that they were promised independence by the British and the France, but they did not got independence. So they started resisting. They started developing anti-British and anti-French attitude. And because of this cheating, this concept of Arab nationalism emerged among the educated class of this region, which means they started saying that we all are Arab people, we are all same people, right? The second important factor which is responsible for all the conflict is rise of Wahhabism. So Wahhabism is a new ideology, and many of the modern day terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they inspire themselves from the Wahhabist ideology. Wahhabism emerged in 18th century in modern day Saudi Arabia. And the founder of Wahhabism was Ibn al-Wahhab. Now, Wahhab believed that Islam has corrupted in last 1200 years. Many Muslims have adopted many non-Muslim cultures, or they have adopted many non-Muslim practices. And the objective of Ibn al-Wahhab was to take back Islam back to 6th century AD, to ensure to purify Islam from all the non-Muslim practices. So he was a fundamentalist, he was a extremist. And Ibn al-Wahhab he did a pact with Al-Saud, who was the founder of the Saudi dynasty, which is still ruling the Saudi Arabia. तो अब ये पैक्ट जब मॉडर्न डे सऊदी अरेबिया बना इन अर्ली 20th century, so it was decided, it was a pact between the Saudi family, the Al Saud family, and the Al Wahhab family. So both of them decided that we will follow the Wahhabist ideology in Saudi Arabia, and that is why when you look around to Saudi Arabia, you found that it follows the most extremist version of Islam, right? And basically the pact was that the Wahhabi clerics said that we will support you politically. In return, you also have to ensure that the state will be run on the basis of Wahhabist ideology. A problem ये हुआ कि Wahhabist ideology was a very dormant ideology till, let's say, till 1950s, 1960s. Why? Because Saudi Arabia was not a rich state. But then something happened in 1940s, 1950s. A lot of oil was discovered in Saudi Arabia, which made Saudi Arabia very rich. And with that money, Saudi Arabia started exporting Wahhabist ideology across the world. India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia. For example, I give you a simple example of not a Wahhabist ideology, because the basic idea of Wahhabist ideology was to Arabize Islam. Islam is a very diverse relationship. It's a very diverse religion. The Muslims are very diverse people. The Indonesian Muslim, the Indian, even within India, a Bihari Muslim or a Tamil Muslim, they have very little in common in terms of culture. And the biggest example was East and West Pakistan, right? So Wahhabist ideology ने क्या किया? कई सारे मदरसेस बनाए इंडिया में, पाकिस्तान में. Through that, it is trying to Arabize Islam within the subcontinent and within the whole Asian region. For example, a few years back, or I think say a few decades, when I was small, I would say, we used to hear a lot of this term Khuda Hafiz as a greeting. Now it's replaced more and more by Allah Hafiz. Now Khuda is a Persian word for God, and this is the prevalent practice in the Indian subcontinent. But the same is not with Allah, is the Arabic word for the God. Similarly, Earlier we used to hear this Ramzan Mubarak. Now we are moving to Ramadan. Ramadan is again Arabized word of that. So its idea is to Arabize Islam, which is fine, but on the other hand, it's also responsible for a lot of extremist or export of a lot of extremist ideology throughout the world. The 9/11 bombers were also believers of Wahhabist ideology, right? So rise of Wahhabism is also responsible for, because when with Saudi Arabia becoming rich, it started exporting this ideology even in the Middle East region also, UAE, Qatar, etc. ठीक है ना? Third is the Israel-Palestine conflict. We have already discussed that in detail in the earlier lectures. Fourth is the Saudi-Iran Cold War. अब हुआ क्या देखो, Saudi Arabia is a leader of Sunni world, or more so over the Wahhabist world, the Wahhabi ideology. On the other hand, Iran, 1979, Iran there was Islamic revolution. Before that, Iran was secular. Iran had Islamic revolution, and the regime of Shah Reza Pahlavi was replaced by Ayatollah Khomeini. Since then, Iran is being ruled by this Ayatollahs, or what we call as Shia clerics. Now, Iran, when there was revolution in Iran, the basic idea of that was that now we'll export this Shiite revolution in other countries of the region. So there is a conflict between Saudi and Iran. Saudi as a leader of the Sunni world and Iran as a leader of the Shia world. What's the difference between Shia and Sunni? So Sunni believes that Abu Bakr, who was the companion of Prophet, he should be decided at he should be the next caliph. The Shias believed, on the other hand, that the nephew of Prophet Ali should be the next caliph. On the basis of that, they got divided. But with time, the antagonism between both these, it increased a lot. So this is the basic problem. So जो भी conflicts हो रही हैं पूरे region में, it's because some is supported by Saudi. For example, Yemen में there are two groups: the Houthis, who are the Shia rebels, and the government. तो ईरान सपोर्ट कर रहा है हुटीज को, सऊदी सपोर्ट कर रहा है गवर्नमेंट को. तो बेसिकली दिस सेम कॉन्फ्लिक्ट इज गोइंग ऑन सीरिया में द गवर्नमेंट इज लेड बाय द Assad family. Assad is the Alawite, which is a offshoot of Shia Islam, while majority of Syrians are Sunnis. So in Syria also, Iran supporting the Assads, Saudi Arabia is supporting the other side. Same is happening in Bahrain. Bahrain में the monarchy is Sunni, the population is majority Shia. Government Iran supporting the protesters, Saudis supporting the monarchy. So this proxy war is going on in various parts of Middle East because of rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So this is the whole map. These countries are Iranian influence. Iran, Iraq is also majority Shia. Syria, and you have the Houthi-led Yemen. On the other hand, if we talk of Saudi Arabia, these are the countries under the influence of, these are the Saudi allies. So this includes countries like UAE, Bahrain, all these monarchies, Gulf monarchies are part of Saudi. And then you have the wild card state, which are mostly neutral. So you have Turkey, you have Oman, you have Jordan, etc. ठीक है ना? The fifth reason is American foreign policy. So when oil was discovered in the region, America ने कहा भाई अब तो हमारा time आ गया, अब तो we should come here. Now because the people did not have good experience with the British and the French, they welcomed the Americans. So Americans' foreign policy in Middle East is about safeguarding its own interest, and that own interest is oil interest. For that, US does not. So US has this whole, in public they say, na, we are for democracy. Why did they attack Iraq? Because they wanted to bring democracy in Iraq, which was being curbed by Saddam Hussein. Why did they support rebels in Libya? Because they wanted misrule of Gaddafi to be over and they want a democracy in Libya. But same is not applicable in the case of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of the most I would say oppressive regime in the world, and it is the biggest ally of USA. Why? Because Saudi Arabia is on the sides of USA. Tomorrow, if Saudi Arabia leaves the alliance, then Saudi Arabia will also require democracy. So democracy will only be required in those areas which are against USA. If you are a friend of USA, whatever regime you follow, that's fine with you, right? Now, if we talk of, now that we have we have understood the whole concept, now let's come to the issue part, which is the India-West Asia relations. So basically, we should divide it into two phases, the pre-1991 phase and the post-1991 phase. So pre-1991 phase, India's relationship with West Asia, with Arab countries was cordial, but not that great cordial, because many of these Gulf monarchies were part of the US-led alliance, and India on the other hand was neutral and it was tilted towards Soviet Union. So mostly India was friendly with them because India had a lot of Muslims in India, and for them Mecca and Medina was the holiest place. So therefore, because of that, we were supportive of Palestine. So therefore, we had a good amount of soft power in the West Asia, but nothing conclusive. If we talk of the post-1991 era, things changed because Cold War ended, Soviet Union disintegrated. India, on the other hand, India opened up its economy. India also exporting a lot of its people to Gulf countries. So because of that, we wanted, and plus because our economy was growing, so we wanted more oil and more gas. So because of that, we started developing close relationship with many countries of this region, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, etc. Now, what is the importance of India-West Asia relationship? Let us understand. So, first is the geostrategic significance. Geostrategic significance. So, geostrategic significance की अगर हम बात करें, तो first of all, it's a gateway to Central Asia and Europe. Chabahar Port. Why we are building Chabahar Port? Because Chabahar Port is in Iran. It gives us first of all access to reach to Afghanistan. It also helps us in checking what Chinese are doing. What Chinese are doing it at Gwadar in Pakistan. So all these things, we can check it on if we have, if we take over the Chabahar Port. Similarly, other corridors like International North-South Corridor, all of these goes through the West Asia. So if we want to connect with Europe, if we want to connect with Central Asia, we'll need to develop these links with these West Asian countries. Similarly, oil dependence. A majority of our oil comes from Middle East, and without oil, as you know, अभी बड़ा महंगा पड़ता है यार डीजल भराने में. It's like very expensive. So एक आम आदमी, हम जैसे आम आदमी और आप जैसे आम आदमी की पूरी इकोनॉमी बिगड़ जाती है if the oil price increases. So it's very important to us. We don't have people, जो कोई वो, so that is why ultimately it's very tough. So oil dependencies. So if there is any problem in the Middle East, it is any problem in the West Asia, then it indirectly hurts the purse of common Indian people, because they have to pay more money. And as you know, that oil is also used as a raw material in various industries. So our economy is very much dependent on smooth supply of oil. Similarly, Indian population. So as you know that there is a lot of Indian people who are working in Middle East. 7 million Indian people are working in the Middle East, and these people send a lot of remittances. So for their safety also, we want to develop good relationship with West Asia. And last is the Pakistan angle. So Pakistan plays this Muslim card that we are also Muslim, you are also Muslim. So, and India is oppressing its Muslims, so let's be friends. That card has never worked till now. So India has always, in order to negate the card, India has developed strategic partnership with various countries of West Asia, including Saudi Arabia and UAE. So the idea is that if we will not talk with West Asia, then Pakistan will be able to actually, put into display that perception that India is against Muslims. Second is cultural significance. Since the Harappan times, we have this knowledge that India and West Asia has been doing a lot of trade. There has been a lot of elements of Indian Rigvedic culture which is found in Syria, which was the modern day Assyria and Mesopotamia. So that is a cultural angle too. Plus, as you know that Indian Muslims, we have the second or the third largest Muslim population in the world, and they are also, they are somehow responsible for, for them, Mecca and Medina are the holiest places. So there is a cultural element there. Similarly, there is an element of security also, which is there. तो अगर हम security angle की बात करेंगे, तो first is energy security, as we have seen. Second is remittances. It actually helps in making Indian economy robust. ठीक है. Third is terrorism. As you know that Wahhabism ideology has been responsible for a lot of extremism in the Middle East, and many of countries in the Middle East are looking forward to the Indian version or the subcontinent version of Islam, which is based on Sufism, which is based on intermixing, which is based on moderation. So many of them believe that if we can gospel that. And similarly, you need to understand this thing, that earlier it happened that many of the Indian terrorists, they used to commit the crime and they used to go to the either Saudi Arabia or UAE. But now both of these countries are helping us through extradition. For example, Abu Jundal, who was one of the mastermind of 26/11, he went to Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia extradited him to India. Similarly, Indian population also is something we need to take care of. Next is economic importance. So as you know that Indian investment in West Asia is important, and as you know that many of these West Asian countries, they have a lot of surplus resources with them because they have become super rich thanks to their oil wealth. And अभी क्या है कि they are investing their surplus money in USA. They are buying these treasury bonds, which is not giving them much returns. So they can actually invest in India. India requires a lot of money for infrastructure development, smart city, and so many other initiatives that the government has taken. We need money for that. West Asia has the surplus money, so both of them can integrate with each other. Similarly, West Asia is also important for remittances, and there is a term called as Khaliji capitalism. So many of these Gulf monarchies, I have a privilege of going to Dubai and Qatar, and I have closely understand the model of these countries. So what they have done is that the oil money, some part of the money they have utilized for their own benefit, but the sheikhs of these countries, they are very forward-looking people. They know that someday oil will be over. Now Dubai mein oil is already over, but the Amir of these countries have a very future vision, and they believe that in future the oil will be over, and then we will again be back to poverty. So what they did was they utilized this oil wealth for diversifying their economy. For example, Dubai is now a major tourist destination. They have everything. They have snow parks, they have national park, everything they have. Right? They have beaches also. Similarly, they have transformed Dubai into an international financial center. Right? So ultimately, what they did is that Dubai को उन्होंने ऐसा बना दिया कि भाई oil रही या ना, oil तो हो गया यहाँ पे खत्म. उसके बाद भी Dubai will continue to be a rich city. Same the Emir of Qatar is doing. Right? So they have utilized this money in actually improving the quality of life of their people. They get free education, free health, free housing. They can go abroad for studying, and the government will bear the whole cost. So there is a lot of privileges of being a Emirati or being a Qatari, and they are also investing their money in other infrastructure projects in various countries. Right? So this is what we call as Khaliji capitalism. What is the importance of India for West Asia? So for West Asia, there are two, three main things. One is that, as you know, why did US came to Middle East? For the oil. Now US has started believing that because US में क्या हुआ है लास्ट कुछ सालों में शेल गैस का प्रोडक्शन काफी ज्यादा इंक्रीज हुआ है. So the shale gas production has increased in the USA. So USA no more is dependent on Middle East oil, right? Secondly, US feels that China is a bigger threat now, and US is utilizing all its energy in countering China in the Indo-Pacific. So because of that, US is actually not taking much interest in Middle East or West Asian politics. It is now a silent spectator because जो उसका purpose था आने का वो solve हो चुका है. Now these countries are looking towards India and China. These countries are looking towards India and China as somebody which can provide them some kind of security. And as you know that with US not being a big market of Middle East oil, it is India and China which will be the biggest market of Middle East or West Asian countries in future. So therefore they believe, and thirdly, see, India has been growing at 6-7% in last 30 years. And as I've already told you that the surplus money which these countries have, they invest that money in US Treasury. और वहां पे कोई खास interest है नहीं उनको. They don't get much return for that. So rather than, investing their money in USA, if they invest in India, that will give them more result, that will give them better ROI, right? Similarly, as you know that Middle East is suffering from a lot of its internal threats, terrorism, tribal conflict, ethnic conflict, and as you know that US is no more there to safeguard that. So they are looking towards India and China, and India, as you know, has a very it has a very promising naval power. So Indian Ocean में security provide करने के लिए, piracy को रोकने के लिए, it requires the help of India, right? Similarly, it also, lot of Indians are working in Middle East, and actually many countries of this Middle East, they are built by Indians. So for that also it wants to develop close relationship with India. Moving on to the Look West policy. So because of or realizing the importance of West Asia, India launched Look West policy in 2005, and the idea of Look West policy came from Look East policy, which was launched in 1982 by Narasimha Rao government. So what were the key features of this policy? The first feature was that secular and non-aligned policy, which means that we will not have any favorites, we will deal with everyone. If our interest supports that, we will engage with any country of the world. So we will have a secular ideology. We will not look West Asia with the lens of Shia, Sunni, Christian, Jew. We will deal with whatever country which is upholding our national interest. Second is diplomacy at various levels. So not just government to government diplomacy, we'll also go for business to business diplomacy, people to people diplomacy. Also, we need to focus on improving the trade relations. So we will need to look beyond oil, and we need to diversify our trade relationship with Western Asian countries. Similarly, we need to move towards non-ideological policy, which means that our engagement with West Asia should depend on economics and not on politics. As I've discussed in the last lecture also, that how does China conduct its foreign policy? China acts like a trader. China does not give a damn that whatever political arrangement that you have, you are a democracy, you have a dictatorship, no problem. If that country is beneficial to China economically, China engages with that country. So same thing is part of the Look West policy, that whatever is in benefit of our economy, we'll do that, right? And last is major emphasis on maritime diplomacy, which means coordination in the Indian Ocean region. Now, what are the major challenges that we face in West Asia? One is political instability. As you know that last 10 years have been a freaking experience for the Middle East. And majority of the countries, they either had a regime change or there was some instability. So we had a regime change in Egypt, Libya, Tunisia. There were conflicts in Syria, Iraq. There were protests in Bahrain, Qatar. So almost every region of every country of this region have been affected. Lebanon is always involved. So basically, that is also a major factor, that because of political instability, if we engage with West Asia, if we depend on the West Asian oil, somehow in future, if there is some problem, if suppose because ISIS का कब्जा हो ही गया था ना सीरिया में, इराक पे, if tomorrow ISIS captures, let's say, UAE or Kuwait, then it will disrupt India's oil supplies. So that is a basic problem, right? Similarly, there is also a regional rivalry, which is a big problem. There is a proxy Cold War going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran, as we have discussed in the earlier part, right? And there is a problem because ultimately there are three poles in West Asia: Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Israel. And somehow it's difficult for India to balance relationship with all these three poles. Till now, this has been the biggest achievement of India's foreign policy, that we have good relations with both Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. But in future also it will be a big challenge because Iran and Israel are not doing well. Iran and Saudi Arabia, they don't see an eye to eye. So that's a big challenge for India to balance that tightrope. Similarly, there has been increasing China influence in the region. What we are seeing is that many of these countries are part of One Belt, One Road initiative or the Maritime Silk Road initiative. तो अब US जा रहा है, वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज जा रही हैं, तो अब tomorrow in future we'll have to fight with China. So that is also a big challenge for India. Fourth is the Pakistan factor. See, in last few years what has happened is that Pakistan has significantly increased its diplomatic efforts in the Middle East, and that is why when this 370 thing happened, CA thing happened, after many years, some of these Gulf countries did criticize India's action. So Pakistan has been playing its role as a spoiler, but fact यही है कि यार Pakistan, even these countries believe that Pakistan के अंदर वो बात नहीं है because it's not economically doing well, right? And that is why when Saudi Arabia refused to criticize India on the repeal of Article 370, so Pakistan threatened Saudi Arabia with that, we will do something. So next day what Saudi Arabia did was, Saudi Arabia said कि भाई ठीक है, जो आपने लोन हमसे लिया था वो लोन तो हम एटलीस्ट वापस कर दो, देन उसके बाद तुम्हें जो करना है करो. तो नेक्स्ट डे ही जो है वो अकल आ गई पाकिस्तान को कि भाई वी कैन नॉट गो अगेंस्ट Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia somehow is helping Pakistan a lot economically. So Pakistan can go up to an extent only, right? With India, these countries see that India is a big market. So with India, they see some economic sense. With Pakistan, they only see one sense, which is religion. And that also does not bind them. To be really honest, I've seen in Dubai, I've seen in Qatar, how the South Asian Muslims were treated. I mean, ultimately, the Arabs don't consider South Asian Muslims to be their equal, because they believe that they are mostly converted Muslims. So ethnically, they are of a racial inferior pedigree compared to the Arab Muslims. Next we have is the West Asian domestic condition. So basically oil prices जो हैं वो बीच में fall हो गए थे, तो वहाँ पे भी problems हैं. Their economy is not doing that well, and if their economies will not do well, then the pressure will be on the Indian workers or the foreign workers who will be working there. So if tomorrow West Asia stops immigration from India, that will be a big problem for many Indian states like Kerala. One reason behind Kerala's prosperity is because from every household, one person is in Gulf, and they are sending remittances back, and using that remittances, people in Kerala are doing so well. Moving on to the way forward part. So what should be the India's strategy? Let's understand. So first of all, we need to shield India's economic interest. देखो बेसिकली क्या है कि गल्फ कंट्रीज में सिस्टम था काफिला सिस्टम, राइट? द exact name of the system was kafila system, and under the kafila system, what do we mean by this term kafila? It means that it was kind of an agreement. ठीक है? So under which if any Indian worker goes to, let's say, UAE or Qatar, then he becomes the responsibility of the employer or the sponsorer who has brought him to that country. Now that worker cannot leave the country without getting NOC from the employer or the sponsorer. His working hours, everything is dependent by this employer, and that is called as modern day slavery by many experts. Because होता क्या है कि if somebody goes to Dubai, वो first day आपका passport छीन लेते हैं, and then you personally became their slave. You cannot leave the country unless and until they allow you to do. So they work 18 hours a day without a break, without anything, and 18-20 people live in a single small room. So things are not very rosy for the Indian worker, especially the blue collar Indian worker. So we need to shield our economic interest. We need to ensure कि भाई जो हमारे लोग हैं, जो हमारे workers हैं, they should be treated well. Their interest should be safeguarded, right? So we should focus on that. Similarly, we should look beyond oil. We should expand. We should diversify our partnership with the West Asian countries. There are a lot of things which India can offer to them. There are a lot of other things which these countries can offer to us. We can promote tourism. We can promote, agriculture exports. We can promote textile exports. So all these things, we can go for. Similarly, we can leverage the Gulf-Israel normalization. Now that many West Asian countries are, they are recognizing Israel, so it gives us a window of more open engagement with Israel. अभी तक India, because of fear कि it will alienate our Arab partners, that is why India and Israel were dealing mostly in secrecy. Now we can deal with more openness. And lastly, we can get along the Khaliji capitalism. They have a lot of money. We can ensure that they spend that money or they invest that money in various government schemes like smart city, infrastructure development, solid waste management. In all these areas, this money could be utilized. ठीक है ना?
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil's Daily.